The third and final step of an online course design process is to plan your activities. These are the activities that both you, the instructor, and your students will need to engage in working towards demonstrating the intended learning outcomes of the course. Consider these following questions. What teaching and learning activities will students actively engage in as they progress towards achieving the learning outcome? What activities might support students in their ability to achieve that outcome? And another question being, what activities will foster social and teaching presence? Now, there's definitely lots that you have been doing in your face-to-face classes that could be inspiration for moving online. However, the encouragement when thinking about online learning is really to borrow from, but then also adapt previous forms of engagement. Here's a look at several different possibilities organized into different forms of engagement. So for acquisition, typically that would be the lecture format, possibly readings, and this can be transformed or transitioned to the online environment, but approaching it in a different way. So instead of a 50-minute lecture, it's often encouraged to break lectures down into 5 to 7 minute videos and smaller chunks. And really limiting those videos to those times where it's absolutely essential that ideas be communicated both verbally and through visuals. But then building out around that with readings and text, and then also possibly asking students to be involved in concepts and knowledge acquisition through possibly maybe collecting their own data, doing their own research, etc. But then there's all other a variety of different options for teaching and learning activities, such as collaboration, where students are going to discuss and share with their peers, possibly get feedback as a result of doing that, to practice by solving problems, engaging in case studies, reflecting on their learning, possibly engaging in some mind mapping. And then production likely heads more towards the assignments and assessments of the course, but it's things like the eventual production of new content and new materials, whether that be an oral presentation through digital means, creating content, engaging in some writing, etc. So let's return to that constructive alignment chart. And really building on what you've contributed so far within that chart as you've built it is to add into this column here regarding the teaching and learning activities that are going to support students in getting to the assessments that you have outlined as the ways that students will be evaluated on whether or not they've met or are working towards those learning outcomes of the course. And again, it's always valuable to keep track of the e-learning tools that might be needed in order to make these activities a reality. So in previous stages of this online course design process, we had an example where there was a learning outcome of analyzing the research design of an article, and that was going to be accomplished or evaluated by a quiz, an annotated bibliography, and an essay. The question becomes, how can we support students in getting to those assessments? What sort of activities might they need to engage in order to be prepared to engage in those assessments? And playing out this particular example, what gets added here is a short lecture on academic rigor, a reading or some resources around writing an annotated bibliography, possibly engaging in the search process. And then there's also the component that the instructor has added here in terms of peer feedback on drafts of the essay as the students are preparing to submit that final version. Adding to the list of tools then, we need a peer review tool that's going to support that type of swapping and feedback from one student to another. We're going to need to record a video, and so some technologies around that, and a place to hold some of these readings, and that's possibly accomplished in a learning management system such as OWL through the lessons tool. As you go along and continue to add to your constructive alignment chart, it's often helpful to start to consider that there are consistencies across the various activities and the technologies that you are adding to this growing list. So one helpful step in making the transition from this plan to then the actual course structure, whether that be week by week or module by module, is to pay attention to those consistencies across assessments, activities, and technologies. The elements that repeat themselves time and time again become this overall course structure and the rhythm of your course. So for example, these are much placeholders, but it gives you the sense as to, as the chart gets built out, that there's overlap in some of these aspects, and that becomes something of the core elements or core components of the course. So it's really yours to discover and yours to populate in terms of continuing to add to your constructive alignment chart based on your learning outcomes, to consistently come back to those outcomes as the guide and the ultimate decider as to what gets included in your course and what could wait for possibly further development. Looking ahead, the course design plan eventually will become your course structure. And the remainder of this series, these resources, will hopefully help in progressing that development for you.